Well, hey, podcast listeners, I'm TJ.
And I'm Julie.
And in episode 61 of the Pixar Post podcast, we're going to chat about our review of Incredibles 2, the movie.
Woohoo!
That's not the official title, Incredibles 2, the movie. And spoiler-free, so
Yes.
don't worry. We're going to, I guess there could be a couple things that could be construed as spoilers, but we're really going to keep it top level.
Yeah, well, it has to be spoiler-free because only you saw it. I was not able to attend this screening.
That's true, too.
I don't want you spoiling it for me.
Okay, you got it. Let's see. Also, we're going to talk about John Lasseter's departure from Pixar. So we're going to go from like really jovial to kind of heavy. It's kind of, we kind of feel bad combining these topics. We don't really want to put this into one, but it's the news that's out there. It's what we got to talk about. We shouldn't shy away from it. It's something that needs to be discussed, even though it's tough.
Right.
It's bad on all accounts, but the news of Incredibles 2 is great. So what do you think? Would you rather talk about the Incredibles 2 first, or would you rather talk about...
we should talk about the John Lasseter news first.
Okay, perfect. So I'll high level it here. So essentially what happened is that last Friday, so June 8th, John Lasseter announced that he'd be a creative consultant, kind of between John and Disney corporate.
Bob Iger,
that he would be a creative consultant that John would through the end of the year, and he wouldn't be returning after that. And this is on the heels of the leave being announced in November 2017, May of 2018, when it should have been the 6-month mark that he was on a sabbatical, came and went, and we didn't really know what happened from there. But all of a sudden, this came out. The week prior, Wall Street Journal had an article that said we've heard some information that said he's going to be a consultant. Mm-hmm. But then people weren't happy about that. And so the hashtag Lose Lasseter started gaining momentum online, where people were saying they need to get rid of him. He shouldn't be a part of the company anymore. It was sad to read those things because, and we'll get into this with our feelings, a lot of it is just bandwagon. People that are chiming in that have no information. Mm-hmm. And this is
very, very conflicting.
Absolutely. And this is where it's tough for even us to discuss it, is because it's opinion-based. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into why it's opinion-based. So let's talk through what John Lasseter's statement was. Then we'll read Bob Iger's, and then we'll go through our good, our bad, and kind of our thoughts of this. Mm-hmm. And then as we're talking as well, we have our post that has this information on it. There's a forum topic that's out there that's had some people that are chatting back and forth, including one user that signed up with the username Frustrated and talked about why he thinks it's a bunch of rubbish, essentially. Other people saying, like, hey, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. It's got to go. So here's John's statement. So he said, the last 6 months, noting his sabbatical, have provided an opportunity to reflect on my life, career, and personal priorities. While I remain dedicated to the art of animation and inspired by the creative talent at Pixar and Disney, I have decided the end of this year is the right time to begin focusing on new creative challenges. I'm extremely proud of what two of the most important and prolific animation studios have achieved under my leadership, and I'm grateful for all the opportunities to follow my creative passion at Disney. So then this is what Bob Iger chimed in with. He said, John had a remarkable tenure at Pixar and Disney Animation, reinventing the animation business, taking breathtaking risks, and telling original high-quality stories that will last forever. We are profoundly grateful for his contributions, which included a masterful and remarkable turnaround of the Walt Disney Animation Studios. One of John's greatest achievements is assembling a team of great storytellers and innovators with the vision and talent to set the standard in animation for generations to come. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what do you think about either John or Bob's statements here?
No, I think they're very well-written statements. I think that's nice, to hear. Mm-hmm. But at the same point, I can't help but think, okay, the companies are, the Walt Disney Company, it's obviously the parent company of Pixar Animation Studios,
right,
is doing this because there were missteps, quote unquote, that were... Mm-hmm. That happened, that took place.
And that's what John said in his original letter that said why he was taking his 6-month sabbatical.
And
that there was missteps.
And I understand as a company, if said person is making people feel uncomfortable, action has to be taken,
Right.
regardless of who that person is. Again, we don't know anything. But that's my thought on it.
Yeah, and this is where I get frustrated because I hear John saying his thing, and you can hear that he's, with everything that's been going on, this is the right time to begin focusing on new things, meaning it's almost impossible to come back to Disney and Pixar. Mm-hmm. And then you hear what Bob Iger says, where he talks about how profoundly grateful the contributions are. He turned it around. He's done this. He's done that. This is where I feel like the biggest letdown of this whole thing happened. Is, to me, there absolutely should have been an investigation. Mm-hmm. Because to me, if you're saying that this is the greatest person ever, he did something that turned around the animation for not just Disney, but for generations to come,
Right.
for the industry. If you're talking about that, and you think that these things are true, meaning that you say that these things are great things that he's done, shouldn't you defend that person? Shouldn't you try to either prove or disprove that? Like if John says, I didn't do it, or no, it's not to the level, clearly. I don't think anybody thinks this is to the level of Harvey Weinstein or
no.
anything like that. So I'm going to take a leap there and just state that as fact.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that nobody that I've talked to has said that this is to that level. But I also don't want to diminish it either.
Right.
Because like you said,
if people were uncomfortable,
action needs to be taken.
yes.
Yes. So this is the issue.
And I also feel like if those said people were feeling uncomfortable, should they have to go through an investigation thing and feel uncomfortable again? That's the part that's conflicting.
Right.
I get it, and I get it as a company, and I honestly think they probably thought about bringing him back, but, because of all, everybody, talking and like saying, no, he's got to go. How can you bring him? And I hate to say it, but, a man back into a,
Right. I know.
It's like a slap on the wrist kind of thing, and would he be noted as getting away with something? Again, we don't know the severity of it, but that's just kind of...
And that's the hard part is that, when you think of these other cases, they've been pretty public in people that have come out. Mm-hmm. Like, who am I thinking of that voiced Hopper in A Bug's Life?
Kevin Spacey.
Kevin Spacey. I mean, there's an investigation. There's multiple people that have come out. Mm-hmm. There's people that have publicly said, who they are. Every one of these sources about John Lasseter were anonymous. Mm-hmm. No one had said, this is who I am. This is what happened. This is why I am bothered. It was always, an ex-coworker heard from another coworker, or prior executive level people at Pixar or at Disney. I was always bothered by that, mm-hmm. that there was never a name to it. Mm-hmm. And as we continue to talk, you'll hear why I was bothered by some of those things. But here's what bothers me the other direction. Not only if it weren't true, why would Bob Iger, with all of this pedigree that he just said that John did for the mm-hmm. industry and that John has, why would he not fight for him? Mm-hmm. So that's where I also have on the other side of my mind, like, crap. If he didn't do it,
right,
fight for him. If he did, and you're just trying to mask it under this, that's what it feels like without having any further dialogue about it.
Right. But then you think about the Walt Disney Company as a family company.
Correct.
And Pixar Animation Studios, very diverse, very,
open to
and everything.
LGBTQ rights right at the forefront.
Yeah, and I just feel like the investigation wasn't happening because it's all about, like, it's a family company. I felt like they
needed to keep it more quiet.
Not that they can't like protect their employees kind of thing, but I think it might have gotten to the point where it's like, we can't, even though you are like the top guy. Well, in animation, these missteps ring bad for the
but that's
for the
where
whole company.
That's where it's, to me, that if that's the case, if they're like, if he really didn't do anything, And this is really a case of we can't investigate it because it might put us in a bad light. To me, that would be even worse, because it's just like you're just turning your back on him.
But think about it. And this is again just speculation, but he admitted to having missteps.
Correct.
We don't know what those missteps are.
Correct.
The Walt Disney Company just spent like a couple $1 billion building Toy Story Land Shanghai, Toy Story Land in Orlando, Florida, Walt Disney World, Pixar Pier, all these Pixar themed things that are happening.
Right.
And they just have like the head of Pixar.
Right.
That if they bring him back with these quote unquote missteps, is that shining a bad light on this family company? And
that's
the part.
But that's what I'm saying, because that's what bothers me is, in my mind, that unfortunately the way that humans think is that leads me to believe that he's guilty. Because if he's innocent, there's no way that Disney doesn't just go, we're going to clear this up right away, because investors. Disney does everything to serve the investors, and this is going to cause a panic. I'm going to be interested to see what's going to happen with the stock. I know that they were trying to temper the reaction of the stock by saying, don't worry, we're not firing him. It's just, listen, shareholders, listen, it's just a move to a 6-month sabbatical. And then, like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, listen. You know, I wasn't saying listen to you. I was saying
I know.
But, like, you know, it's just like, and then now it's going to be like, it's these stages to walk the investors into seeing that the company will survive without him. And they're going to put thoughtful, diverse people, man and woman, potentially in these leadership roles at the respective Walt Disney Animation Studios and Pixar Animation Studios.
I do think they're going to become separate again, where John was head of both.
Correct.
I think it's just going to be a Pixar director, you know, who will move up the ranks, and then a Disney director.
Again, we don't have any information on this. Everything out there has said that they believe it's going to be individual people as well, but I strongly feel that will be the case.
Right.
I don't think that they could feel like they have somebody that could fill those shoes to go across companies.
And I honestly think during that 6-month sabbatical, that's when all of this was formed.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then as he's going to stay on through the end of December of this year as a consultant is when they're going to really work through the plan and say, here's what I did here, here's what I did here. This is going to be the succession plan officially of John handing over the reins. But it still does bother me greatly that we just don't know anything. Right. And that's because the human mind wants to know it. We want to have a yes or no. We want to be curious. Right or wrong. Yeah, exactly.
Like, I mean, people are curious about anything. And I mean, that's why people slow down when there's an accident on the street, you know?
Right.
I mean, people look.
Right.
So it's like, it's like you want to know. And,
but it's
not
it's
only
hard.
that, but it's someone that you've looked up to.
Exactly. And that's the biggest problem is you want to know if who you idolized for all those years was really as bad as your mind can portray it to be.
Right. Well, as we've seen on the media with these other people.
Correct.
You know, it's like, I don't feel the way, but again, I don't know. I was never in that situation, so I don't know.
Right. The other thing that comes along with this is just, you know, the people's reactions. You read different comments on different posts. We've been reading them on Wall Street Journal and Rolling Stone and all these other sites. Hollywood Reporter, Variety, all these others. And the comments are all over the place. They've got the people that are like, this is taking the Me Too movement too far. Other people are saying, thank goodness, this is what needs to happen. Then you've got other people that are chiming in and saying just simply, Disney and Pixar are done. There's no way that they can continue. And, you know, we've been chiming in on those comments.
Yeah.
Saying that, you know, no, that's not the case.
No, because the talent in Pixar Animation Studios is unbelievable. And it wasn't just because it wasn't solely John Lasseter.
Right.
I mean, he has a very creative mind. Don't get me wrong, that he still has it. It's unbelievable. But I mean, you think about all these directors. You think about the up-and-coming directors that are there. You think about all the storyboard artists and all the other new talent that's coming in all the time. And it's just evolving in a different way. It's just changing direction maybe a little earlier than we thought.
Correct. Yeah, because ultimately he was going to eventually leave anyways.
Right.
But you're talking about people that have worked alongside John for 30 plus years, that have information of working alongside him, that are going to be
Stanton, Pete Docter,
exactly
Lee Unkridge,
that are going to be able to carry that on. I mean, people like even Dan Scanlon that worked side by side with him.
Been there since Cars.
Exactly, he worked side by side with him in the story team, and then also on the short that he did, Mater in the Ghost Light.
Producers too. That
exactly.
So
Corey
people.
Ray's been there for so long.
Right.
Obviously, Darla K. Anderson left not too long ago as well. But it's just interesting that it leaves it so open. It kind of hurts because we'll just never know. And it's like anything when there's a loss. If you want to classify this as a loss. Nobody's ever okay with it because there's never a good time to have an end.
Right.
It always leaves questions. It's a breakup where all of a sudden one person moved out of the country and you never heard what the hell happened.
Yeah, I know. And you go back and forth and then you think, oh my gosh, when you've seen all the studio behind the scenes tours and stuff, and Lasseter has that huge office. Yeah. Full of toys.
Oh my God. We talked about the dismantling of the office and how bad
will that still be there?
No, they said that he will no longer have an office.
Oh, but I didn't know if maybe they would just keep, but they probably won't.
Image-wise, I don't think they would want to.
Yeah. So it's just that's
kind of this is the shrine to John Lasseter's office. People wouldn't like that. So
because Steve Jobs still has a room there, right?
I'm not 100%, but I do believe so.
Yeah, I'm not 100% either. I thought they did.
Right.
In the Brooklyn building.
I mean, he has the Steve Jobs building, and they have the tree.
But I couldn't remember if he still had an office there.
Right. I do feel like there was a slight misstep just overall with the whole thing, though. I think the whole sabbatical was partially to subside the investors so it wasn't an immediate drop-off of John leaving. But then I also think it was a little bit of, well, maybe we'll be able to see if this movement kind of passes and we can just, come back in.
It might have been, but they had to have known that it's not, he wouldn't.
After it got going,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I thought about, just from a good standpoint, to put a positive spin on when people say that, it's done now, is, if you think about John Lasseter, he had a formula. Most people have a formula. Like Sting has said it many times on his songs, because if anybody listening to this doesn't know, I'm totally obsessed with Sting and the Police. But he did an unplugged or a VH1 thing many years back, 15, 20 years.
I was going to say VH1 is unplugged. We were a lot younger then.
And he basically said that here's my formula to every song. It has an intro, it has the verse, it has the chorus. And then I'm going to go back to the verse, I'm going to have a bridge, I'm going to do the chorus. He said this is and then he said, I'm going to play one and you're going to now see it. And you're like, wow, that's the formula. The good thing is that with him also exiting, because again, it was going to happen eventually.
Right.
Pixar and Disney knows the formula, but there might be somebody that wants to execute it slightly differently now. With it also comes, they don't have to follow it to the exact T that he did. Like I said, there could be somebody that's going to look at it a little differently. I just feel like sometimes when he was over films, maybe they were leaning on this, we've got to get it done. And maybe we've got to get it out. It's going to be a predictable amount of money if we do this formula. I would like to see the formula shifted a little. We had, I think we might have mentioned it on here before. We've had it in side conversations. All the movies had the little kid at the beginning, the main characters as young characters at the beginning, babies, infants, toddlers, whatever. And then it would all of a sudden flash forward after the first 5 minutes, and then they would be at the age they're going to be in the movie. And then it had the surprise twist villain. It was definitely formulaic. Part of me feels like that is, that kind of started with the whole Bolt trend when he started at Walt Disney. I feel like that can get a nice rejuvenation to twist and switch that up a little bit. And I'm not saying that everybody did that on every film, but you could see some of the Lasseter influence. This is going to make us money. People go, oh, when there's a little character, they're bought in immediately. And I can't disagree.
Right,
The beginning of Monsters University, young Mike Wazowski is the cutest thing ever.
Yep.
The beginning of Frozen, those characters are super cute being young. And it does. It imbues you to those characters a lot earlier. But I feel like, yeah, there's still times that can be like click and shift and let's move forward. So that's what I'll say for people that are being, other people that are taking over. We can see some more variance and difference potentially. Mm-hmm. Just trying to put a little bit of a creative spin on it.
And then, I mean, this changes the brain trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
At Pixar.
Absolutely.
And I wonder if this is going to change how the brain trust operates.
Yeah. Well, so one thing that I won't say who's on it yet, but at the end of Incredibles 2, you have the Pixar senior creative team, which is essentially the brain trust that are all part of that. And like all of a sudden when Brian Fee's name showed up, we're like, what's he working on? Mm-hmm. And then we ask Pixar and they're like, well, we'll let you know in the future when he's ready for his project. And then, of course, we find out he's on Cars 3. So I started looking. There's a lot of people that are in there now.
I have a feeling that
it's just different.
Changed. And there was like 3 people that were on for Coco, 2 or 3 extra names.
Right. There's a lot more now.
Okay.
Yeah. So I feel like they're adding
more diverse.
Women? Yeah, there's definitely more. But yeah, it's just interesting to see that. We'll have to list all of them out because it was kind of just right past in the credits. But I definitely noticed a lot larger chunk of names. So I'm looking at my notes as far as like, the good, the bad, all that kind of stuff. So I think in general, and this is where I wanted to have, this is for me personally, where I wanted to have a yes or no. Mm-hmm. I wanted to have, because then I feel like I can move on. Like, okay, yes, or okay, no, great.
Right.
But now I know either way I have to move on with he's not there anymore, which stinks. But what hurts for me personally, not only from someone you look up to, someone that changed the industry, just as Bob Iger said, but he's responsible for creating some of the coolest characters, not even in animation history, in film history.
Right.
I mean, I know that he wasn't fully responsible for all of the design of Buzz and Woody. Yeah. But if I think of Buzz and Woody, those were his original ideas. And it was other people like a Bob Pauly and Bud Luckey and other people that worked alongside him to create the look. But he was responsible for like the lifeblood of those people, the DNA of those characters. And that's where it just stinks to think that this was a possibility, because it does take a little bit of a chisel to your childhood and just go like, tink. But I'm not letting it chisel anything away. The chisel's there, it's hitting, but nothing's chipping off in my mind right now, because I won't have an answer. So I'm not going to let an assumption take a chunk out of that. Mm-hmm. So that's where I kind of wanted to just, at least in my mind, talk about what stung the most for me with this whole thing.
I agree with you.
The other thing that I can't help but also just think about is his family. I mean, Nancy was at all these premieres with John, and, she never seemed like she was just there. She was a part of it. She seemed like she was, independent, strong, on her own, and had all her own ideas and helped out with the winery. And, there's all these other things that she did too. And then his sons, who every year at the studio, he does a juvenile diabetes research event where people can come to the studio, they donate, and they raise a ton of money. Mm-hmm. I don't want to see that necessarily go away for juvenile diabetes research, but that'll more than likely go away because that's a basis of him. So it's like that industry is going to get hit with a big loss there. So there's just so many bad things that I just don't love. And there's articles that have come out, editorials that have come out from people that said they've worked with him for years that said, there's no way, this is not the case. This is not who I've worked with over 30 years. And they pointed out other inaccuracies in the articles where they talk about the fact that, the article points out that it got to the point where nobody would take creative notes other than from Ed Catmull. And, people were like, no, that's not the case. Like, he would say this, he would say that, So it just makes you feel like, okay, what about those inaccuracies in the article? How much does that lean on the inaccuracies? I know I'm circling around and around on this thing, but it's just because I don't want it to be true. In my heart of hearts, I don't want it to be true.
I know, and that's where I have to play like the devil's advocate and be like, but what if part of it is true?
Exactly.
And someone was uncomfortable.
Exactly.
I don't know
And it's not even
extent
uncomfortable.
of the uncomfortable, or if they were violated.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Felt.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Violated.
I was going to say we can't even just say uncomfortable, because if he truly did violate somebody's not only personal space, but what we know as what's right and wrong, it
was inappropriate.
Then that has to be addressed.
Yeah.
But I don't know. And then the whole comments of like he had handlers that would like stop him from drinking too much at parties and everything, and it's like those were like I just want.
Yeah, you don't want to hear that. Or
I could envision that there was an article that went out, or an email that went out to all employees that said essentially, do not talk about this outside of, this is going to be handled by Disney PR. Do not talk about this outside of the walls. But I would have loved if I could have heard something from employees. And I'm not saying that I want that to happen, because I know that would put them in a precarious position. And I know that's not professional to do. But it's, again, it's satisfying and wanting that curiosity to be satisfied.
Yeah.
So.
But again, I mean, we've seen John at one event that he was speaking at, so we've never worked alongside him. We've never
we don't know the
interacted
stories,
with him.
right.
The one time that we were going to, our schedules didn't.
Correct. Yeah, it didn't work out. He had to end up taking off. But it's just, if somebody was affected, violated, however we want to state it, obviously we want to be cognizant and sensitive to those people too, and don't want
to minimize
it because of the artwork that he created. Because you can create as many cool characters as you want, but that doesn't give you creative license to then touch somebody. But since we don't have any answers,
we don't know,
we have to just look to a positive light to the future. We know what is happening now.
And say, Pixar is they're doing phenomenal. I mean, Coco is by far my favorite Pixar film.
Correct.
I absolutely love Coco. I can watch it like 1,000 times in a row, no joke.
Hey, you haven't seen Incredibles 2. Maybe you don't know.
But and then when you came home and said how good
man.
Incredibles 2 is, and I'm just like, okay, we're on a roll here.
Right.
Bow.
Right.
Domichi, I mean.
Correct. And she was greenlit to direct a feature film.
Right.
Or at least to continue to develop an idea, which could be a feature film. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's a lot of great movement that's going on that, they're showing that things are moving forward, that things are being progressive. They've always been at the forefront of, the It Gets Better movement with, people that wanted to come out and say that they were, LGBTQ, and state who they were. They've been at the forefront of all of that. So I want people to continue to be positive about this and see that there is definitely creative
and I think
juice
they have
that's flowing here.
A thing at the studio I think it's called Palette, where it's like it celebrates diversity within the studio. So, I mean, I think they're going in a fantastic direction. I think they've always been going in a fantastic direction, but I think even more so now.
Right.
I think everybody's just more aware of it.
Yeah, absolutely. This has definitely brought to light a lot of great conversation that's forced people's minds to think differently about things. You can take Apple's slogan from back in the day, think different, and apply it to Pixar now. It's interesting. We did have a side conversation with an employee that said that, when we were talking about LGBT rights and that kind of stuff, and it just came up casually that I kind of forget that, you guys are in Michigan and I'm in my little world within Pixar working there, and then in California, where it's like it all is so supportive that when you start to hear things elsewhere, it's like, oh yeah, that's not just I'm living in a bubble in Pixar and in California.
Right.
That it's so open and nobody thinks about. I mean, I shouldn't say nobody, but it's much more accepted. So, anyways, that's the conversation there. That's 29 minutes of that. So. Anyways, now let's talk about, here's a hard shift, to Incredibles 2. Wow. So
we were invited out to a midday during
screening.
the week press screening.
Yeah, it's interesting because usually they're at like 7 p.m. at a theater, and this was at 1 o'clock, so it was definitely interesting.
My mom can come over and watch our son, but no, this was midday. I'm a stay-at-home
she was
mom.
At work, and your mom was at work, so she couldn't watch them. But So yeah, I went to this, and we invited in turn our friend Giovanni, which if you've been on any of our YouTube Live or Google Hangouts, you've seen him been on there. He actually is in California as an animator, but is back in Michigan currently, and was from here originally. Went to college for creative studies, and so I was like, well, he's a great person to have come along, and so he was in town. So I said, Giovanni, let's go. So we went, we recorded right after the movie ended. We went and sat outside the theater on a bench, and we did just on the iPhone. I didn't bring anything else. I didn't bring a notepad because, if you've watched those too, I usually always have my tons of notes, which I'm going to do next time I see it.
Which is Wednesday.
Which is Wednesday is the next time I'm going to see it at the AMC double feature. But yeah, so we sat down, we talked through it. It's like 20 minutes, so get ready for that. We're going to get into that in just a minute or two because I don't want to say too much again because most of it's in there. But there's a couple things that I did want to call out. So first off, just as you see the movie when you go in, one of the things I'm going to talk about, which I don't consider to be a spoiler because it's pre the actual film start. But you know how they have like the castle that, is different in different films. Pirates of the Caribbean had the pirate flag on it. They do different things for different movies.
You know what? And that still bothers me.
That the Brave castle couldn't be
that
there?
The Brave, that they couldn't do the Brave flag thing on the castle. That was but now, like
every
Beauty
movie.
Beauty and the Beast, the live action one, was a different castle. Pirates, it was the pirate flag. Every time I see when it's different, I always think of Brave and Mark Andrews and Brenda Chapman, and that couldn't be done. Right.
That was kind of, it was kind of...
I think of it every time.
I know, I did. I thought of it when I was sitting in the theater.
Yeah.
The opening is amazing, what they did to the castle. Okay. So I'll say that. But this is the first time that the Pixar logo was changed. And it is so cool.
And it's not changed. It's just the tone of it is changed to match the film.
It's incredified.
Okay.
So, and here's what I'll say. So Matt Jones, an ex-Pixar employee, chimed in, and he put a tweet out that said, caught a screening of The Incredibles Part 2, loved the stylized studio logos, and make sure you stay for the closing title animation by John Holtzclaw.
Josh
Holtzclaw. Sorry about that. Picture has a gorgeous render quality plus production design. Ralph Eggleston and team knocked it out of the park. Josh chimed in and said, thank you so much, Matt. So glad you enjoyed it. Lots of work went into those studio logos. So I cannot even tell you how cool they are.
Oh, I can't wait.
I was sitting next to Giovanni and I just went, oh my God. And he's like, I know. Like it was... We talked about it, and you'll hear us talk about it in our review too. We talk about the only time that we've ever seen it change is that, it was always the static 2D, you just saw it, but then eventually they did like the where it comes around it, like it circles around the logo, makes it look like you're coming around from a different angle. But that still was not changed to this level. It is so cool. And definitely stay through the credits.
Okay, yes, so I had stay through the end of the credits. Is there a scene at the end? Okay.
At least there wasn't in this screening.
Okay.
I don't know if they're going to have something extra, but I doubt it. I feel like it ends at the perfect spot. Anything extra would be like, okay.
Okay.
So I feel like it's just good enough, but still stay because
you see all the artwork.
Yes, there's a ton of artwork that's during the credits, which makes it super cool. Plus, you get to see all the names of the production babies and all the staff and everybody that worked on it from PR all the way up to,
see who's
the
changed
cafe.
And, we love staying through the credits.
Well, you better. If you're listening to this podcast, you better.
Yeah.
You're a Pixar fan through and through if you're listening to this. So, the movie itself, I mean, you'll hear our review. I don't want to expound too much because then it's repeating myself. But it's amazing. It's a ton of action. There's some things that I'm going to continue to think about on second and third watch. But I'm placing it somewhere between a 9 and a 10. There's only one teeny tiny moment that I felt like could have been edited down by like a minute or two. But if you're talking about over 2 hours, it's like 118 minutes or something like that. Or just over, just under. It literally is like, if you're talking about 1 or 2 minutes, that is the only time in the whole time I was sitting in the theater that I was like, ooh, I might have... Because usually I have little things in my head because I'm always analyzing it. And you do too. Where we're sitting there and we're like, might want to switch that. Or afterwards you think of things. I've still been thinking about it. And there's literally 2 minutes that I feel like could have been cut. That's it.
Wow.
So that's amazing.
But I don't know if you talk about this in your review with Giovanni, but do you mention Dean Kelly's storyboarding in a particular scene?
So I do mention that he did it. Okay. But yeah, I can't. Yeah. So there's a scene with Elastigirl that you see on her motorcycle. Mm-hmm. You know that if you've seen any of the previews.
Yeah. Elasticycle.
On her Elasticycle. Yeah. Elastigirl, Mrs. Incredible,
Helen Parr on her Elasticycle.
And there's just this chase scene that is just...
It was boarded by Dean Kelly.
Yeah. They said in one of our sessions that they gave him a pretty broad term of, Mrs. Incredible goes on an incredible chase. And the way that the way that he boarded this out was, I would put this up against any action movie, live action that has ever been done. I'm talking like racing through the streets in cars, not in the movie Cars, but like car chases in action movies, Bourne. Think about like that kind of stuff.
Like Fast.
Yes,
Furious.
It is just ridiculous. I said this I said this in our review that he's going to totally... I don't want to jinx it, but I have to say it. He's going to win an Annie Award for that scene, for boarding that scene. Mm-hmm. And I got triple confirmed because on his social media, he posted the opening shot of that sequence. And he said, oh, here's like an opening shot of the sequence I did. And I was just like, oh, it's so good. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, you can't... I said it during... I'll leave that for there. I won't even go into it. It's like I got to tell you this afterwards. But... yeah, you'll hear it in the review with Giovanni, but yeah,
it makes me wonder if he would ever direct. I know not all directors come from the story department, but a lot do.
But it depends on what he wants to do too.
Yeah, he might.
I mean, he might not have a story. He might not want to pitch it. Who knows? He might just be the story expert and just want to do that. Yeah, I mean, not everybody wants to. Yeah.
But just because he's got such a different eye, it seems.
And he draws so fast and so detailed. It's sickening.
Oh, I don't want to say jealous because jealous kind of sounds like I'm envious.
Yeah. But the thing that's great about the story department in general is that if you get into that department and your job is a story artist, you are refining your craft minute by minute because you have to do so many hundreds of drawings a day that literally like you can get to that point where you can get a lot more detail in quicker. A lot less time. Mm-hmm. But like if I were to start doing it, or even a beginning animation student or somebody that just started in that department, they're going to be slower. Mm-hmm. But like they have an idea how they're going to block things out a lot quicker. And it's just...
They're always honing their craft, it seems like.
It is. Well, you have to. I mean, you do in all departments because like, they didn't use these specific lens profiles before. Now they are. It's like, and then the next movie they can do that again. Oh, speaking of that, one thing I didn't talk about in the conversation with Giovanni, holy cow, there is some amazing handheld shots, which we know from the interview we did with Patrick Lynn, as well as Sascha Unseld on The Blue Umbrella. That The Blue Umbrella was the film that pioneered that they brought that live action where they actually have like a motion capture camera that actually does and mimics in the film what motions they're making as they walk through a empty studio. Mm-hmm. And they took it to another level again. There are some amazing handheld shots, especially at the beginning. It cools down a little bit as the film goes, but at the beginning it is wow.
Why can't I watch this movie right now?
Well, I said that in a tweet. I said the worst part about Incredibles 2 is that when it ended, I wasn't able to watch it again. That's the worst thing I can say about it.
Well, and you came home and you were just like, it's amazing.
It's because the action is so good. I mean, you're not...
You said not only the action, but the story.
Yeah, the story is great. You're going to get these good tender moments in it. You're going to get the huge action in it. But it's definitely, if you're talking about like Coco... You've got a lot more story and emotion in it. This is weighted the other direction with a lot more action and a little less story. But the story still has some great heart. And there's some really, really cool parts with Mr. Incredible where he has like a moment with himself. And they all have these... There's great character arcs. Multiple characters are having arcs at different points throughout the movie. And the fact that Brad Bird handled this all on his own is just like ridiculous. Like
he said, that's like how he wants to work, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think Michael Arndt, I believe, was brought on as a consultant. But I don't know at what stage that was, because Brad talked about that he had to just keep scrapping things and starting over and starting over and starting over. So yeah, I don't know. It just...
Well, do you guys talk about the music?
Yeah, we talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great. You guys are going to love it. I mean...
Well, let's listen to it.
Okay, you're right. Let's listen to it. I could continue to talk about this, but what we're going to say, and I think I mentioned it in there too, now I'm forgetting because that was a couple days ago, but we're going to definitely have a live discussion where we talk about, our review of this. So stay tuned. Watch for our
once
notices.
I finally see it.
Yeah, and watch for our notices on YouTube where we talk about, that we're going to be having a live hangout to discuss all this so that you guys can join the listeners as well and give us your thoughts and feedback so we can
Probably
share some
after
of those.
opening weekend. That way
it'll be after opening weekend. Yeah.
Get a chance to see it.
Yeah. So, wow. So get ready. Stay tuned. Here's our interview with Giovanni and myself as we walked out of the theater, and then we'll pick up at the very end here. So this is going to be in our podcast. I am actually just got out of the theater with our good friend Giovanni here.
Hey there, everyone.
If you've been on any of our live hangouts, you may have seen him before. Essentially, we got out of Incredibles 2. First reactions.
Amazing.
Okay.
I'm sorry, better word. Incredible.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
All right, so yes, it absolutely was incredible. The thing that I kept thinking throughout it, the first thing, was Brad Bird is a genius.
Absolutely.
He is a filmmaking genius, because as you watch the scenes unfolding, you start to see how they're framed, and I know that obviously the story department is involved with a ton of that too, and the layout team and all. Everybody's involved. But when we chatted with Brad Bird at the studio, he talked about the fact that, why would another director have a co-director? You don't want to give up any control over it because he has the ultimate vision. And I feel like he really drove it. And there was just so many amazingly laid out scenes, and we're not going to talk about spoilers on this, but Screenslaver. What did you think about Screenslaver, first off?
Thought it was really interesting how they did it. Definitely a different kind of villain.
Okay.
I don't know. What would you...
Yeah, so the one thing that I won't go too spoilery, but I'll say something that, he has a location.
Yes.
Screenslaver has a location that he operates out of, and that was so different for Pixar.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
The style felt totally unique. Just the imagery, the closeness of it.
And seeing it seen as one of many scenes where you're really just on the edge of your seat the whole time.
Yes.
It's part of many where you're just like, something can happen at any moment, and that's this whole movie. This whole movie is just an adrenaline, but there's also great comedy mixed in. It's just it's a beautiful,
Yeah, it's touching.
Yes.
There's moments where, between Mr. Incredible, or I should say Bob. I always call him Mr. Incredible.
Yeah.
But Bob and Violet had some nice moments together.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Great family moments throughout the whole film. I thought, great father and son stuff with Dash and Bob. And the fellow who voiced Dash in this film.
Oh, Huck Milner.
Oh, my goodness. He just stepped into that role like it's always been his.
It doesn't feel any different.
No, not at all. He did one, and he has some of the best lines of the film.
So when Nemo had to get a new voice, when they premiered it at D23, it sounded pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
This, I could have never thought you could have found somebody that sounded exactly. When Finding Dory came out, I was like, okay, I can tell it's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
This, I can tell not one different.
Yeah.
In fact, I would almost say it even sounds a little better. It feels more like Dash than the original Dash.
Right, yeah. He just took that character, ran with it, and just, absolutely. I loved him.
Insanity. So, like we said, not a wasted shot. Tons of energy and action. Okay, the one thing I will say, the opening. The very, very opening. Should we talk about that with the castle?
Yeah, I mean...
It's not too spoilery for the film.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know how in recent movies Disney has been doing where they transition the castle into a theme after the movie. So, in Pirates even, they put the pirate flag on top of it. And what are some of the other movies that they've changed it over?
Tron, they've done it for a lot of the animated films too, like Lilo and Stitch. For years they've been always. So that was like I was so excited to see that. I leaned over to it. I was like, the castle. They changed the castle.
Yeah, and what still bothers me though is that they wouldn't allow it to be changed for Brave. But that's a whole nother story. Yeah. But for this one though, it's very stylized.
Oh yeah.
Very stylized.
Fits The Incredibles perfectly.
It feels very much like Teddy Newton's style, when he did all his original concept artwork and some of those sharp edges that he created for the characters. And he was, again, a consultant on this film. So that's cool. But it came up, and yeah, we both were like, oh my God! So that was awesome. Mm-hmm. But then the first time ever that I'm aware of that they ever changed the Pixar logo with the lamp.
Yeah, the only other time I think they ever did like something different was when 3D started getting big, and they did they did that sideways twist, but never like a color change.
Yeah, it's a color shift.
Yeah,
it's very different. You guys are gonna love it.
Yeah,
and it absolutely brings you immediately into the film. It took away all of like the whole like brought to you by all that kind of stuff. Not that I don't get excited as a Pixar and Disney fan seeing that, but that part was amazing. The other thing that I thought was super cool. Tying into, and we're going to talk about this next, is Giacchino's score. Oh. But when the castle came up, and again, it's stylized, it comes up, you know how it gets like the Tinkerbell sparks over the top of the castle? It was bongos, like, it was bongos, and it was transitioning from the right speakers to the center above us over to the left.
Holy Toledo. I can't wait to watch it again I missed that.
There is so much that I did not bring a notepad into this one. Part was because I forgot it, but the other part was told myself I don't want to go in and do it for the first watch. I don't want to look down at all. I couldn't have looked down because you miss something in a half a second. But so that really, with that arc of like the Tinkerbell spark or the fairy dust trail coming over the top, like I was like, okay, this is going to be an amazing Giacchino movie. And it absolutely was. What did you think of the score?
Oh, perfect score. Because we all know the Incredibles, original Incredibles score is so iconic. So this one just delivers that same amount of just epicness that just complements the movie so well the whole way through.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it was crazy just hearing some of like the more subtle moments. I can't wait to hear the soundtrack. Yeah. It's at the end of June that it's coming out, but I can't wait to hear some more of that to determine what like some of the titles are. Now I'm going to go back and look at the titles now that we've seen it and see where they kind of match up. But I didn't hear any, like, other than the Incredibles theme, I didn't hear, like, a Screenslaver theme.
No, nothing, yeah.
But the music would slow down a little bit.
Yep.
So it was almost like the slower horns. I got to digest that again to fully, but I can tell you that at the end, when the film is wrapping up, I'm not going to say anything about it, but at the end, it was amazing too. Like that, it felt like now you've got a little bit of a refreshed theme.
Yes.
Coming into the end when
it's got that familiar to it, but it's also like you said, it's got a new kick to it as well.
It did. Yeah, it was definitely a little more upbeat and jazzier, and you could tell he kind of stretched himself a little bit. And I still think that Giacchino, with his experience on the first Incredibles, that kind of fed some of the background of Zootopia soundtrack, because that feels very much like that, heavy on the percussion and drums, and the really upbeat nature to it. But this one, brought it right back to like that jazz undertone with it, which just works so well with keeping the energy and action going. All right, what about the animation?
Oh, I mean, just crazy stuff they do.
So you obviously know this.
Yeah, the rigs they do, the thing, and little things like there's a lot of great moments in this film where characters are talking, just interacting.
Yes.
And they feel so different. They feel like the acting choices in each scene were carefully chosen. I was watching, and like for different characters too, little things they did. Everything is so well thought out.
Yeah.
I loved it. Oh, and of course, just like watching these scenes, like Mrs. Incredible, like on her bike, that like the scene where she's on her bike. God. I'm just saying, the animators who did this scene
so that was
amazing.
You're talking about with the train,
yes?
Because we know that there's a train. If you've paid attention to anything of it, there's a train involved, and she has an elasticycle. So there's a scene where she's essentially in pursuit of that train, and that was boarded by Dean Kelly. The team, like Ted Mahat, the story supervisor, he was saying that we gave Dean this really broad sense and said, this is going to be an action scene, board it out. So that was essentially a lot of his doing, and that scene blew me away. absolutely blew me away. I've been dying to talk about it, and I can't wait to talk about it more when I can spoil it more. But literally, when I was at the studio and they showed us that scene, I couldn't believe it. Mm-hmm. The angles, the cut speed.
Is that what it ended on when what you saw? Oh my gosh, what a scene! Like they show you that, and they're like, and then we'll show you the rest in a little bit.
That's where it ended.
Oh
yes.
my gosh.
But literally, like, I just can't even. I can't even. So Dean Kelly, he's, if you've followed our site, he kind of was under the radar for us at first. And then he started winning a whole bunch of Annie Awards when we were watching those and seeing, what was happening there. And then you start hearing people in the studio kind of chattering, like going, oh, Dean Kelly. He has like a mystique about him. Other people do, of course, as well. But there's just something that, like, they say they can give him almost impossible scenes. He can board it out to make it this incredible action sequence. And that sequence did not disappoint.
No.
The second time I saw it, my heart was racing just as much. I could feel an elevated heart rate.
Yeah, you already knew exactly what was going to... Yeah, you were just... Yeah.
You know what I realized I should do is since I have the Apple Watch, I should hook it up one time and track my heart rate.
Oh, you should.
While I watch the movie to see how it aligns to the scenes.
Heck, this is going to be the whole way through it. With that film, yeah, that's a great idea.
So back to the the animation. You mentioned like some of the subtle nuances and everything like that. There were really great nuances, like just how a character would move even in the background a little bit. I loved the animation of some of the wannabe supers, especially Screech.
Oh yeah, with the head turning and everything. Just capturing the essence of an owl just perfectly.
Because his head can turn 360 degrees. Like, it was so cool. But like, just even
Void's like nervous, kind of like her nervous nature captured perfectly. You can just feel her sort of just how excited she is to meet Elastigirl.
Absolutely. Some of the nuances with Mrs. Incredible as she was torn. And they were having, okay, all right, how real was this scene when and we saw it in some of the previews, so again, I'm kind of pausing just to make sure in my head as I'm thinking it through that I'm not going to spoil anything, but where they're talking about, should Elastigirl, should Mrs. Incredible, Helen, go off and do this, and Bob is having their conversation back and forth. That's such a real moment again, just like...
Again, yeah, so many scenes just of just talking, but... They carry so much weight to them. You're so invested watching these scenes, like that's just crazy how an action sequence can have as much weight as just a talking scene like in this film.
No music.
Yeah,
it's just quiet in the bedroom, and they're having a conversation back and forth, and just as much weight, just as much weight in his importance, and you get bought in immediately. How about as far as the characters themselves? We haven't talked about the characters.
Oh yeah, I mean, none of them disappoint. Every time a character's on screen, Jack. I mean, again, without saying too much, he's
a scene stealer.
He is. He definitely Dash. I think is a scene stealer too.
Right.
He just I loved Violet. Like you love them all, and of course.
Yeah, Violet had probably the biggest arc. Mm-hmm. In terms of like sub characters. I mean, she may have even had the biggest one. I don't know. Well, I'm gonna have to digest that some more.
Absolutely.
But she had a very big arc as far as just understanding what's happening and being a teenager and fighting through that as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and then Dash, he didn't have so much of an arc as much as like the comedic relief.
Yes, absolutely.
And, like, his attitude and his styling was just hilarious.
But Bob too, I think, had a great arc of just kind of having that acceptance.
You're right.
That he had a good one too of kind of putting aside that super life. Let Elastigirl do her thing, and that family life. I just really liked his growth as well as a father.
There's a lot of arcs going on because then you think about Mrs. Incredible having her arc with being okay with being in the spotlight instead of taking that role, even though she kind of wanted it. She also kind of held back a little bit.
Right.
So that was a cool arc. But what did you think about the wannabe supers? Was there any of those moments or those characters that stood out?
I'm trying to think. Their powers are great. I think they're what they gave them. I love their looks, and I wanted more of them. Honestly, I wish there was even more of them. It's like again, just like I told you, Lotso's gang. They're there. They look cool. You know they're cool, and you want even more of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then how's about Which direction do I want to go now? Also with Edna.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so did you want more Edna, or did that feel right?
Like, yes and no. Like what we got was perfect, but at the same time, you could always have more Edna, and it's but what they gave us was, I thought,
it's
was
perfect.
Great.
Yeah, so that was great. I said this at the studio. People disagreed with me as far as that I was sitting next to some of the other media sites when I was at Pixar, and they said no, it should have been gone. I shed a tear about Elastigirl's Elasticycle. Not really.
Oh, I know. I was bummed. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. More of the bike.
Yeah, I wanted more of the bike.
Especially because that scene too, where you see it and it's just like, you're like, what she's doing with it. It's
yeah,
like,
it was incredible. It was incredible. All right, closing credits. A lot of movies, a lot of times they have a scene that pops up after. Mm-hmm. Unless it's different in this screening, I didn't see anything.
Right. Yeah.
But you still should stay through the credits, of course, because the animation was really cool.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, just if you love the especially the beginning of the credits at the end of the first film, you're gonna love these. You're gonna love them.
Yeah.
So. And
I did like that they incorporated at points 2D animation on the TVs that they were watching.
Yes. Yeah. Lots of great.
So for animation,
great 2D stuff in this film. I mean, just like. And the design, the 2D just artwork throughout the film, like on a cereal box. I find myself staring at like cereal boxes and stuff, and just saying like, "Wow, the artwork, the time, the thought that was
sugar bombs and fiber O's."
Yeah, yes, right. Yeah, I love that fiber O's box. Yeah, so just little things like that too. Everything is so, has so much care and passion is crafted into it.
Did you see somebody made those at the studio?
What?
Yeah. So somebody took a picture and shared it. I can't remember. It was one of the employees. They shared a picture of it. They essentially took a regular cereal box and just did a wrap around it, and they left them in the cereal room. And they were like, "Hey, what is this? How did these get here?" Yeah, that was cool. So, all in all, I mean, we can't say too much more without revealing a lot more about the film. But all in all, first impression, what do you think as far as on a 1 to 10?
These numbers, because I always, you've asked me this 10. I really this is like a thing where when I was watching this film, I really didn't have, like, again, we said moments where I went, oh, that could have done without that scene. There wasn't, you know, and I really can't find a place in this movie to really fault. I know it's always especially great coming off the right out of it,
right?
But anything that what would you give it?
So, well, the hard part is when I do this coming out, I immediately am all jazzed up still.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I'm feeling it. So I would say a 10 as well.
Yeah, I mean, do you find yourself comparing it to the first one while you're watching it? Do you
good question.
Do you ever go, oh, this reminds me of this, or in the film, they've done this by this point.
Right. So this is what I love about Brad Bird and originality on it. Finding Dory, I love the movie. Mm-hmm. Don't even think that I'm going a different direction with this. But there are elements of it where I felt it had too many callbacks to the first film.
Okay.
Too many, they did this, so now they're going to do this.
Right.
This character comes around, they had the seagulls and all these other things. Mm-hmm. Too many callbacks at times. This, I don't feel like had really that many callbacks.
No, not.
I mean, there were things that shadowed a little bit or mirrored slightly just because of the role reversal.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people in the beginning, because you're only seeing previews, are like, oh, I see. It's kind of the same thing with, Helen doing Bob's role in the first film, but that is like totally out the window. I feel like the trailers are really setting you up to like surprise you with a really fresh and original
and that's
thing.
Great.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is going to have a big rewatchability. Mm-hmm. You're going to see it again?
Oh, absolutely! I can't wait to go in and now second viewing, find your Easter eggs and find everything else.
Yeah. So we'll also say this: it was very difficult to see any or many of the Easter eggs. We found A113.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah.
We believe we have an idea where the Pizza Planet truck would be.
Right.
But we're not 100% certain.
And if we're going on Incredibles 1. Who knows if it's even in there?
Ooh, that's true.
Could have just been like, we didn't put it in the first one.
Or we can't say anything other than this, but is it possible that just the idea of it is in the movie?
Oh, that's a good idea. That makes sense.
Is it never shown, but the idea of it is there?
Yep.
Because of the character.
That's a nice way to sneak it in without actually being there.
That would be innovative.
Yeah, that would, yeah.
That would be innovative. Yeah. I think this is going to break some records for sure.
Oh, yeah,
the word of mouth, which we always talk about in our reviews, is going to be very high for this film.
And it was already tracking with pre-sales being a huge opening, right?
Yep. Yeah, so I think this is definitely going to... I mean, I don't... It's, you know, some people say it's like you shouldn't put, you know, count your chickens before they hatch, and you don't want to curse it.
Right.
But I've got the $1 billion vibes.
Oh, yeah, and you know, people always say, always say, like, this is the sequel we waited for. We waited 14 years for it, and you want to know what?
You did.
It was you waited, and it was worth it.
It was
what you get was
worth it.
was definitely worth it. And
I mean, we people have talked about the technology the whole time. The technology was incredible in this. How much it's advanced.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. I won't say what it was, but you see a scene that was a very quick one at the beginning that's recreated.
Yes.
Shot for shot, whatnot, and just seeing it with new rigs, new technology, and everything. It's just you're like I did a little like wow, like when I saw it, because like just like you see how far things have come.
It's drastic.
Yeah,
drastic. So, anyways, there's without a doubt we say go see it, and be sure to stay tuned because we're gonna have once the movie's out broadly. Maybe that weekend or right after the weekend, we're gonna have a live hangout, a YouTube live. To talk about all of our reactions, so we're going to be looking for your feedback on it as well, as far as you listening to this right now on our podcast, and just more to come. Get ready, take notes, write them down when you get out of the theater, and share them with us, because we want to hear what you think as well. You can, of course, go to pixarpost.com for all the latest Pixar news. You can go to the forum. You can chat about all of your thoughts on the movie. You can leave a review on our site, on the comments. You've got lots of different ways to talk about this, but we definitely want to hear what you think, so that way we can share it on our live hangout, or if you join us on the live hangout, you can just type it right in the chat, and we'll hear it as well. All right, thank you, Giovanni, for joining us.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. We are excited after our early screening of Incredibles 2, and I'm going to be seeing it again next Tuesday.
And I'll be
or next Wednesday at the double feature.
You are? Me too.
Yeah. Which one are you going to?
Forum 30.
Oh, I'm going to the one in Livonia.
But I couldn't miss that. Especially how they like start and end.
Yes.
Right next to each other. It's like perfect to watch them together like that.
So I'm going to go see it again next week, and then I'll see it again on opening night, and then we'll go from there.
All right.
All right. Talk to everybody later. Bye. All right, well, that about wraps up this episode. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media channels, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, or subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. Lastly, if you like today's show, let us know. Rate us on iTunes, leave a comment on our site, or send us an email at info@pixarpost.com. Signing off as usual, I'm TJ.
And I'm Julie.
And be sure to stay tuned to pixarpost.com all week for the latest Pixar news. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.